A dusty, quiet farm woman stood under the bright sun, clutching a worn rifle close to her chest. Her clothes were plain, her boots cracked, and the tan lines on her hands told stories no billionaire here would ever understand. Across from her, standing on a polished wooden stage built just for this occasion, the CEO's son leaned into a microphone, his designer sunglasses glinting under the sun. His voice, dripping with condescension, echoed across the lush green fields and marble hunting pavilions. "If you can even hit the target," he said, laughter already bubbling in his throat, "I'll eat my boots." The crowd erupted. Laughter rolled like thunder over the manicured grass. Expensive watches caught the light as arms pointed at her. Designer boots stomped the ground in mock applause, and sleek hunting rifles gleamed like jewelry. The woman said nothing. She simply stepped up to the dusty line, settled her rifle against her shoulder, and exhaled like the land itself was breathing through her. A sharp crack sliced through the laughter. The first shot slammed dead center into the target. So perfect it was almost surgical. The billionaire's smile faltered. Gasps rippled through the VIP crowd. Before they could recover, another shot rang out. And another. And another. Each bullet struck the target's center like a drumbeat of defiance. By the 10th shot, the laughter had died. The only sounds left were the steady ping of perfect impacts and the stunned silence of millionaires who suddenly realized their fortunes couldn't buy what she had just shown them. Their polished, million-dollar rifles hung forgotten in their soft hands. In 10 heartbeats, the simple farmer woman had rewritten the legacy of the hunt and humiliated them all without saying a single word. 2 hours earlier, Hawthorne Hills Estate looked like the headquarters of royalty. Dozens of black SUVs lined the private gravel road leading to the secret annual hunt. Helicopters circled once overhead, their cameras zooming in on high-profile guests. Tents the size of mansions have been erected, decked out with champagne towers, personal chefs, and velvet armchairs. It was the kind of event where an invitation alone could buy social status for years. Billionaires' children strutted across the grass in tactical gear stitched with luxury brand logos. The guns on display gleamed unnaturally in the sun, the newest tech from Germany and Italy, rifles so expensive the average farmer would have to sell their land twice just to touch one. Conversations floated by about yacht races, private jets, and new tech startups. Then came her. The farmer woman stepped out of an old, rusted pickup, her boots kicking up small clouds of dust that looked almost offensive against the polished marble of the outdoor firing platforms. Heads turned immediately. Murmurs buzzed through the crowds like flies. She wore simple faded jeans, a plain white shirt under a green canvas jacket, and a wide-brimmed hat that had seen more storms than fashion shows. Her rifle, slung across her back with a leather strap, was a battered thing made of wood and iron. It might have been considered an antique if it hadn't looked so alive in her hands. The VIP receptionist, a man with a silver tablet and an attitude sharpened by years of serving the rich, spotted her approaching and immediately stepped in front of her. His smile was tight, professional, and completely fake. "Ma'am," he said, holding up a hand like she was a wandering animal, "this area is for registered participants only." His eyes flicked disdainfully over her boots, her rifle, her jacket, and came to rest on her dusty pickup, still idling embarrassingly nearby. A group of sleek young heirs clustered near the champagne tents started laughing. One of them, a boy barely 20, wearing a monogrammed hunting vest, leaned over to his friend and whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Looks like someone's lost their way from the petting zoo." The farmer woman remained silent. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a folded letter. It was old, crumpled at the edges, but the seal on top was unmistakable. The signature of Harold Whitmore, the landowner and former 3-time world shooting champion. Personal invite. The receptionist's face twitched. He scanned the letter with his tablet. A loud beep confirmed its authenticity. A few eyebrows in the crowd raised slightly. She shouldered her way past him without waiting for permission, her steps slow, unbothered by the eyes burning into her back. Inside the hunting field proper, the energy shifted. She did not belong, and everyone made sure she knew it. Cameras from local magazines hovered, their lenses narrowing on her like predators. Guests faked polite smiles as she passed, but snickered the second her back was turned. A woman in a designer camo dress clutched her pearl necklace dramatically and whispered, "Maybe she's the entertainment. You know, some kind of charity gesture." Another man, wearing a hat that probably cost more than her truck, chuckled into his whiskey, "Or maybe she's here to demonstrate what not to do." Even the professional instructors at the range, grizzled men who had seen real war, exchanged glances and thin smiles as she approached. Then the CEO's son noticed her. Ethan Warrington, heir to the Warrington conglomerate. Handsome, cocky, and vicious in that easy, spoiled way that only the truly privileged could perfect. He had been entertaining the crowd with casual trick shots, winking at the girls, laughing too loudly at his own jokes. Now, he spotted the farm woman lining up her rifle on one of the practice targets. His smile grew wide and cruel. He sauntered over, gathering a following like a shark gathering remora fish. His custom Italian shotgun rested easily against his hip. He waited until she adjusted the sight, then leaned into the event microphone meant for announcements. His voice boomed across the sunny hills, soaked in mockery. "Hey there, Ma," he said, tipping an invisible cowboy hat, his grin stretching wider. "What's the prize today?" "Fresh corn for best shot." His friends roared with laughter. One of them added, "Don't worry, we'll save you a hay bale to sit on." The farmer woman did not react. She pulled her hat lower against the sun, shielding her expression. Ethan wasn't satisfied. He stepped closer, eyes sparkling with cruelty, and leaned into the mic again. "Tell you what," he said, "if you can even hit the target once, just once, I'll eat my boots right here." The laughter exploded louder than before. Men wiped tears from their eyes. Women giggled behind their champagne flutes. Phones were raised now, recording, ready to capture the inevitable humiliation. The farmer woman calmly walked to the shooting line. No dramatic speeches. No eye contact. She loaded her rifle with the slow, precise care of someone who had handled the same weapon 1,000 times before. She set her stance, inhaled once, exhaled once. Her fingers squeezed the trigger, and the world cracked open. The bullet slammed into the dead center of the target, and for a moment, the world forgot how to breathe. The perfect shot glowed under the California sun like a scar of defiance. Phones lowered slightly. Laughter thinned. Ethan's confident smirk flickered, then hardened into something colder. He turned quickly, waving a hand at the gathered crowd like he was still in control. "Beginner's luck," he called out, forcing a chuckle that nobody echoed as loudly this time. Even a blind chicken finds a corn kernel once in a while. A few scattered laughs followed, thin and uncertain. But beneath the surface, the energy shifted, an invisible current running through the gathered elites. Instead of folding under the pressure, the farmer woman calmly chambered another round. The crowd held its collective breath. Another shot cracked through the air. Another perfect bullseye. This time, the laughter didn't come. Phones that had been ready to capture her humiliation now recorded something very different. A ripple of murmurs spread like wildfire across the luxury tents and leather lounges. The CEO's son straightened his shoulders stiffly, a nervous hand brushing the barrel of his designer shotgun. All right, Ethan said loudly, motioning for the crowd's attention. "Since you're feeling lucky today, let's make it official." He turned to face her directly, lowering his sunglasses so she could see the gleam in his eyes. "How about a real contest? Head to head. You and me. 1 round, 10 shots. Best score wins. But if you lose..." He let the threat hang in the air, savoring it. "You leave, quietly, through the service gate." The crowd chuckled, emboldened by the thought of restoring their comfort zone. A few guests even began placing casual bets on the outcome, laughing as they threw down cash like it was a horse race. Someone joked, "Hope she doesn't shoot herself in the foot first." The farmer woman said nothing. She simply nodded once, slow and deliberate. It was not the nod of someone bluffing. It was the nod of someone who had been underestimated one too many times. Ethan's grin tightened. He snapped his fingers at an attendant. "Set up the 10-shot course, he barked, his voice cracking slightly as he realized how many eyes were on him now, waiting, hoping, needing him to restore the social order. The attendants moved quickly, resetting the targets with mechanical precision. The air buzzed with excitement and a heavy undercurrent of unease. As they worked, a few of the younger guests crowded around Ethan, whispering in urgent tones. "Man, don't mess around," one muttered. "You saw those shots. She's not a joke." Ethan waved them off irritably. "Please," he said, loud enough for the farmer woman to hear. "It's not hard to get lucky once or twice. She's just a stubborn cow who's had a good morning. Luck runs out." He glanced at her, expecting a reaction. He got none. She merely adjusted the strap of her battered rifle and waited, patient as stone. Minutes later, the course was ready. 10 targets, increasing in distance and difficulty. The kind of course usually reserved for championship rounds, not casual hunting parties. Ethan sauntered to the line first, flashing a showman's grin as he raised his $80,000 precision rifle. It shimmered under the sun, a masterpiece of carbon fiber and electronic targeting systems. The crowd leaned in, some ready to cheer, others grim-faced, waiting for the showdown. Ethan's first shot rang out, a solid 9.8 score. Respectable. Applause trickled through the crowd. He spun theatrically and bowed, drawing out laughter. Second shot, another 9.9. Third shot, a 10. Fourth, a 9.7. His grouping was tight, textbook good. With every hit, he preened harder, pausing after each shot to flash a smug smile at the farmer woman standing silently behind him. After his final shot, a 9.9, the scoreboard lit up his total, 98.3 out of 100. A near-perfect round. Guests burst into applause. Champagne glasses clinked together. A few guests slapped each other on the back. Relieved the disruption would soon be handled. Ethan lowered his rifle with a flourish and swaggered back toward her. "Your turn, farm girl," he said, barely able to keep the glee from his voice. "Try not to embarrass yourself too much. We'll be nice about it." "Maybe." His friends snickered behind him. The farmer woman stepped forward. No speech, no flashy movements, no dramatic music swelling in the background. Just the soft creak of old leather as she shouldered her rifle. She set her boots firm in the dirt, took a breath, let out. Her fingers caressed the trigger like it was something sacred. First shot, bullseye, perfect 10. The scoreboard blinked the number, and the crowd's applause cut off mid-clap. Second shot, bullseye, perfect 10. A few guests shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances. Someone near the back muttered, "No way, no way." Third shot, bullseye, perfect 10. Phones came back out, this time not for mockery, but because something historic was unfolding before their eyes. Fourth shot, bullseye. Fifth shot, sixth, seventh. Each one punctuated by the soft electronic ping of the scoreboard, confirming another perfect strike. The farmer woman didn't pause, didn't smirk, didn't even seem to notice the crowd anymore. She was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere cleaner, somewhere quieter, somewhere honest. Ethan Warrington's face turned redder with every shot. His friends stopped laughing. Some stepped back slightly, as if distance would protect them from the disaster unfolding. By the time she fired her 9th shot, the field was dead silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. She lined up her final shot, exhaled long and slow, and squeezed the trigger. Perfect 10. The scoreboard flashed a full 100.0 score in bright, merciless numbers. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then the farmer woman calmly lowered her rifle, tipped her hat slightly toward the stunned crowd, and turned to walk away as if nothing remarkable had happened. Behind her, Ethan Warrington stared at the scoreboard in disbelief. The laughter he had summoned earlier now curdled into a sick, gnawing silence. His hands twitched uselessly at his sides. In the distance, a flock of birds rose from the trees, startled into flight by the crack of truth that had shattered the golden fantasy of Hawthorne Hills. The silence after her last shot weighed heavier than any applause could have. The kind of silence that cracked egos open. The kind of silence that forced even the most arrogant to see something they could no longer deny. For a few long moments, the elite of Hawthorne Hills simply stood there, blinking under the ruthless California sun, trying to process what had just happened. And the farmer woman? She simply set her rifle down gently against the wooden rack and brushed dust from her sleeve, as if she had only finished a chore on the farm. Ethan Warrington's mouth opened, then closed, no words coming out. His face, once the model of confidence and cruel amusement, now burned a furious red. His friends stood awkwardly nearby, their laughter dead, their hands fidgeting with belts and sunglasses, pretending to check their phones. One of them muttered under his breath, "Man, you just got wrecked." A few guests near the sidelines, the ones who had bet heavily on Ethan, started slipping away toward the catering tents, suddenly interested in croissants and imported mineral water. The event coordinator, a thin man with a clipboard and an earpiece, hustled forward, trying desperately to regain control of the event. His voice cracked as he spoke into the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause for both participants." His desperate attempt to soften the blow fell flat. A few half-hearted claps followed, scattered and weak, echoing awkwardly across the empty hunting lanes. The farmer woman gave no grand victory speech. She didn't gloat. She simply turned toward the official judging table, tipped her hat again in polite acknowledgement, and began walking toward the staging area. Each step she took felt heavier than a gunshot. It wasn't just about a contest anymore. It was about a shift, a reordering of the unspoken rules. She had stepped into a world that wasn't built for her, and then bended around her like a horseshoe straightened by sheer force of will. A small cluster of social media influencers, who had been posting mocking videos of her earlier, were now frantically changing their captions. Comments poured in faster than they could respond. "Farm girl legend. Queen of the range." Warrington humbled. Cameras pivoted to follow her now, no longer as a joke, but as a phenomenon. And somewhere in the crowd, a reporter from a major news outlet tapped a message to her editor, cover story. "Trust me." Ethan, struggling against the boiling shame in his chest, tried to salvage some dignity. He strode toward her with stiff movements, forcing a crooked smile onto his face. "Good shooting," he said, the words so foreign to him they sounded unnatural. The farmer woman gave a small nod without slowing her pace. She didn't owe him anything. Not words, not forgiveness, not even acknowledgement. But Ethan wasn't done. His pride, though battered, refused to die quietly. He grabbed the microphone again, desperation sharpening his voice. "Double or nothing," he shouted. The crowd murmured, some perking up with renewed curiosity. "One more round. Different targets. Winner takes all." His challenge hung heavy in the air. Some part of him must have still believed that if he just pushed harder, just shouted louder, he could erase the crack in his golden image. The farmer woman stopped. She turned slowly, tilting her head slightly under the brim of her hat. Her expression didn't change, but something in the air shifted. A low ripple of anticipation moved through the guests. A few whispered, others held their breath. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was quiet, steady, carrying more weight than all his bluster combined. "You already lost," she said. 3 words. A verdict. A hammer blow. Laughter, not cruel this time, but real, delighted, and liberating, broke out from the edges of the crowd. Not loud, not mocking, just enough to sting. Ethan's face drained of color. His hands clenched uselessly at his sides. He had challenged her publicly, mocked her heritage, tried to humiliate her in front of everyone. And she had dismantled him with 3 simple words. Before he could recover, the landowner himself, Harold Whitmore, approached. The old legend moved with slow, deliberate authority, his white hair gleaming, his steps unhurried. He wore no designer brands, only a simple brown vest and dusty boots, a man who cared more for accuracy than appearance. Whitmore stopped in front of the farmer woman, looked her rifle over approvingly, and then extended his hand. "You honored your invitation," he said, his voice carrying easily across the field. "And your father's legacy." The crowd stiffened. A few people exchanged startled glances. Her father? Legacy? The farmer woman shook his hand firmly, but modestly. No speeches. No declarations. Just respect. Whitmore turned to the crowd, his voice rising. Let be known, he said, that skill, not wealth, defines excellence at Hawthorne Hills. He nodded toward the scoreboard where her 100.0 still blazed like a beacon. And from this day forward, that's the standard. Murmurs erupted among the crowd. Some clapped. Others looked away, embarrassed. The invisible walls that had separated them from her crumbled under the weight of simple truth. She hadn't just won a contest. She had exposed a lie. That money could buy talent. That breeding meant skill. That entitlement could outweigh effort. Near the back, Vanessa Dempsey, the influencer who had posted the cruelest comments earlier, quietly deleted her video. Tyler Reeve, son of an oil magnate, muttered something about needing a bathroom break and disappeared into the luxury tents. Even the CEO himself, Ethan's father, tightened his jaw and refused to meet anyone's eye as he turned away. But Ethan stood frozen. The finality of it settled over him. His eyes met hers one last time. No hate, no anger, just the quiet, unbreakable acknowledgement that she had beaten him fair and square, and he would carry that defeat longer than any trophy he might ever win. The farmer woman gave him a small nod, almost a kindness, and turned away, walking steadily toward the setting sun, her shadow stretching long across the manicured lawn. Behind her, the glittering crowd shifted, uncomfortable and uncertain, left standing in the ruins of their own pride. As the farmer woman disappeared from the shooting line, the once booming VIP hunt felt hollow. The laughter that had colored the air hours ago was now a memory hanging limp in the heavy silence. The elites, who had strutted and posed in their polished boots and $1,000 tactical gear, shuffled aimlessly now, their expensive weapons feeling heavier in their hands. It was not the weight of steel, but the weight of what they had seen. No one dare call after her. No one mocked anymore. Even the champagne tents felt abandoned, like monuments to a faded arrogance. Some of the guests began drifting toward the exit lanes, murmuring excuses about meetings and other urgent matters. A few instructors quietly packed up their gear, faces flushed with quiet shame. Event staff whispered into earpieces, uncertain whether to continue the festivities or simply let them die a natural death. The once carefully choreographed event had unraveled, exposed by one woman with a dusty rifle and the kind of grace that could not be bought. In a lounge, Ethan Warrington sat slumped on a leather armchair, his rifle untouched beside him. His phone buzzed relentlessly with messages, each one a fresh wound. Clips of the farmer woman's 10 perfect shots were already exploding across every social media platform. Farm girl humiliates billionaires, one headline read. Real skill beats rich boys at Hawthorne Hunt, another blared. The hashtags were growing by the second. He scrolled miserably past thousands of comments, each one driving the truth deeper into his chest. You can't buy respect. You can't fake skill. You can't mock what you can't defeat. The landowner, Harold Whitmore, watched it all with a quiet satisfaction. He spoke little, but when he did, people listened. That evening, as the sun began to dip behind the hills and the tents cast long shadows across the manicured lawns, Whitmore stood once more before the battered announcement board. He pulled a brass plaque from a velvet box and, with steady hands, mounted it onto the frame. The engraved letters gleamed even in the fading light. Harper Lane, perfect score, Hawthorne Invitational Champion. 10 shots, 10 perfect hits, new course record. A murmur swept through the remaining guests. Some clapped politely, others nodded stiffly, but there was no denying it now. Her name was carved into their world. Permanent, undeniable. Back by the parking area, Harper Lane leaned against her old pickup, her rifle resting in its battered leather case beside her. She watched the sun bleed orange and pink across the sky, her face calm, her breathing steady. She didn't need to stay for the ceremony. She had done what she came for, honored her father's teachings, carried forward a legacy written not in wealth, but in discipline and dignity. As she adjusted the strap on her rifle case, she heard footsteps crunching lightly over the gravel. She turned to see Ethan approaching, his hands shoved deep into his designer jeans, his face stripped of its usual smirk. He stopped a few feet away, looking for words he didn't know how to say. "I was an idiot," he blurted, voice rough with genuine regret. I thought this was about showing off, winning a game. I didn't realize." His voice trailed off, shame thick in the air between them. Harper studied him for a long moment, her face unreadable under the wide brim of her hat. Finally, she spoke, her voice low but not unkind. "You thought this place belonged to you." She shifted her weight, the old truck creaking softly under her hand. "It never did." Ethan swallowed hard. "You're right," he said. Then almost shyly he added, if you had time, maybe you could teach me sometime. How to shoot like that. How to be better." For the first time all day, a faint smile touched Harper's lips. Not out of mockery, but something softer like forgiveness. She gave a small nod, tilting her head toward the vast, empty field beyond the range. "The land teaches you," she said, "if you're willing to listen." Behind them, the last of the VIP guests loaded into their black SUVs, casting occasional backward glances at the dusty woman who had become legend in a single afternoon. Even the event coordinators, who had spent days perfecting every detail, now scrambled to rewrite the narrative for their sponsors, desperate to spin the story. But it didn't matter. The truth was already loose in the world, untamed, unstoppable. As Harper climbed in her old pickup, Ethan watched her go, feeling for the first time that he had witnessed something larger than himself, something no money could touch. She gave him a small wave through the cracked window before rolling off down the gravel road, dust rising in golden clouds behind her like a trail of smoke from a fired gun. Back at the main tent, the live feed from the range continued to stream. Viewers flooded the chat, praising Harper, mocking the spoiled elites, celebrating the rise of someone real. The hashtags trended worldwide now. Hashtag FarmGirlLegend. Hashtag Harper the Sharpshooter. Hashtag Hawthorne Humbled. In the months that followed, Harper's name became a quiet storm in shooting circles. She refused interviews, turned down magazine covers, and went back to her life on the farm, planting seeds and tending fields with the same care she had given to each shot. But to those who had seen it happen, to those who had heard the soft crack of a rifle cutting through arrogance like a blade through silk, she would always be more than just a farmer. She was the day the elite learned that real strength doesn't come wrapped in silk or stitched into a price tag. It walks in dusty boots. It carries a rifle with worn wood. And it rewrites history in 10 perfect shots.